Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, welcome back to the Logbook and welcome to an honest review of a C63S. I'm a massive fan of Mercedes AMG products in general, and the C63 was always for me the car that I always wanted, and eventually I bought one. If you look through some of the old videos, there's some interesting stuff about that little journey. However, this has dropped into stock and we're taking the opportunity to do a bit of a review because it's actually the first time we've had a convertible in. Now, I've got out in it last night, took it home, I've driven loads of these before and I can give you a bit of a comparison between convertible, not convertible. Are there any things that you need to think about from a compromisation point of view? In a nutshell, no. So let's just talk about how it looks first. I think, hand on heart, the best looking drop-top four-seater with an engine in the front. I'd like you to put any comments in there if you disagree with what I'm saying there. You can buy a Maserati which looks pretty good and pretty Italian and pretty sexy, but I just think the haunch of the rear and the front of this car, the fact that it's on 19-inch wheels at the front, 20-inch wheels at the rear, it's got these beautiful performance seats in, the way that the bonnet kind of bulges out over that AMG engine, I just think they've absolutely nailed the brief on this car. So we're filming here in 2024, this car is 7 years old. Doesn't look it, does it? Not just because of the condition, because of the way that it holds its lines. It's somewhat timeless. Future classic might be a strong word for this car, but it's certainly very special. So let's talk about stats, shall we? So what we'll do is we'll start off with the front of the car and then work our way to the back of the car. But we're also going to look at some of the good things and some of the bad things as well, because we're not trying to sell it on this channel. That's the joy of the Logbook. We can actually be honest about what we really think about these cars. So, under the bonnet, shall we? So let's talk about the engine first, because this is the reason that you buy an AMG, let's face it. If you want something that handles better, you go M Sport. If you want something that is probably more luxurious on the inside, you might go with an RS6 or an RS7. This is why an AMG buyer buys an AMG. So, lots of things have changed since the W204, which is the previous variant. So, on the W205, they reduced the engine capacity from a 6.2 litre to a 4 litre, and everyone went, boo! To be fair, they've strapped two turbos to the centre of the V, so an in-V turbo setup. Now, performance-wise, you can buy a non-S, which is about 470 horsepower, give or take a couple of change, and you can buy an S, which is a 503 horsepower variant. Let's just call it 500. It's got 700 newton meters of torque, which is 519 pound-foot. And for me, I actually prefer the old engine. I'm not going to lie. And the reason I prefer the old engine is because when you put a turbocharger onto an engine, you make them sound worse. However, to give Mercedes their credit, they have still made an exquisite sounding engine, and they've done all sorts of trickery through the dynamic sports exhaust system. So if you buy an S, not only are you ending up with a more powerful engine, which to be fair, I had a non-S and I mapped it to 600 anyway, so who cares, but you end up with a more powerful engine, you also get what's called dynamic engine mounts. And what a dynamic engine mount does, essentially, is it firms up the position of the engine in the engine bay, as far as I can work out. I've done loads of Googling on this. But basically, if you're on a track and you're in race mode, it will keep the engine more firmly in position under the bonnet, so when you're going into corners, you're not getting a little bit of flop with the engine, if that makes sense. So, engine's beautiful, sounds amazing, and it is married to now an MCT 7-speed gearbox. Now, the old gearbox in the previous variant, the W204, was a little bit sloppy, especially the pre-facelift version, which was very sloppy indeed. So, huge changes here. The new C63, which I've yet to have the pleasure of driving, they're now using a 2-litre engine. So they've gone away from the V8, and I do disagree with that wholeheartedly. However, it's 670 horsepower, so I might be swayed when I finally get a chance to drive one. For me, they've done the best that they can do whilst keeping with regulations here, because basically, let's face it, we're all getting forced out of these massive V8 lumps into smaller engines. This is being used in an Aston Martin, so it is obviously an engine that people have liked, and as we all well know, Pagani use an AMG engine as well, so pretty special under here. Interior for me, I like some bits, don't like some bits. Let's have a look inside. Right, inside of a C63. First of all, it's very pretty in here, so I think that they've designed it with aesthetics in mind. So everything's like a matte aluminium finish, so including where you'd put your strap. Now, these always confuse me on sports seats because this is for putting a racing harness in, basically. However, you see them on the RS products. We've got a Jaguar in at the minute. That's got these holes for the harnesses as well. But you'd never actually use it for that, would you? Anyway, still looks sexy. So everything's like brushed aluminium in here. Now, you can go with carbon fibre on the centre console, or you can go like a wood grain effect. This is piano black, which for me is the worst choice because it shows up absolutely, you could fart in here and it'd scratch it. Shows everything up. So, Alcantara on the side of the steering wheel, lovely, thick, chunky steering wheel, and it is a really nice seating position. That unfortunately is where it ends with the seats for me. They look good and you can get into a good low position, which you couldn't do on the W204. They're bloody firm, these seats. For me, I might struggle with that on a long journey. Well, I'm lying. I know I'll struggle with that on a long journey because somebody who I used to live with used to have an A45 which had the same performance seats in, and you did a couple of hours in it, you knew about it. So unfortunately, that does let it down for me a little bit on the inside. But then again, is this the sort of car that you buy to do motorway runs in? Probably not. So ergonomically, everything's where you want it to be. You've got this really cool little console here, so you can kind of flick through all your maps and everything that you need to do. Your cruise control is down here. Now, with Mercs, that stick is very, very similar to the indicator stalk. And a lot of test drives I've been on with customers in the past, they hit the cruise control instead of hitting the indicator. So that can take a little bit of getting used to. However, looks lovely. I really hate doing this because it's one of my favourite cars. Just feels a little bit creaky in here. So the previous one felt a better build quality, and I don't know why. Now, it doesn't matter too much because it's not like you're buying a Bentley, but I just feel like this iPad setup here that does creak a bit, and the dashboard sort of creaks a bit when you're driving. It's a bit of a shame. However, it wouldn't put me off from buying one. This one is a premium, which means you get the Burmeister sound system. Now that is mega, to be fair. So it is I want to say a 13 or a 15, I think it's 13 speaker system. I want to say it's 590 watts, something like that. It's loud, it's good enough. They used to do Harman Kardon in the older generation, and for me that was a better system. Sorry, going to throw it out there. But still, it's good and it's nice to have and it's crystal clear and it's nice and bassy. However, that's not the reason that you buy one of these. You buy one of these for the sound of it. I quite like this. Ooh. Oh, cheers, Matt. Previous owners left us this. We really should have looked round this car, shouldn't we, Callum, before we did the filming. What's that? Oh, it's the garage opener as well, isn't it? Fantastic. Right, okay. Cheers, Matt, mate. It just gets better, this car. I'm really pleased with it. Yeah, so I quite like how everything kind of works on here, and it's all in one easy spot to get to. So the interior for me, I'd give a solid 8 out of 10. I think it looks the bollocks. However, the seats are a little bit firm, and the dashboard is a little bit creaky for me. Back seats. Right, so first of all, if you're a grown adult sat in the back of a convertible, you look like a twat. You might not have been told this before, but you look a twat. So I'm going to sit in here anyway because no one can see us in the showroom. First of all, it's actually okay. You are sat very much upright, which is why you look like such of a twat when you're driving through Monaco and you're all legged into a C63. And I don't know if you saw that, but that seat moved forward. So that is me comfortable. My knees are just about touching the front of that. And let's just see how far it would have gone had I have moved my legs out of the way. Yeah. It's not for big people, this car, or adults. So I suppose you could put a briefcase on here, or potentially children. However, calling it a 4-seater is probably a little bit of a stretch, isn't it? The arse of this car is without a shadow of a doubt one of the best looking rumps on a convertible. And I stand by that. Ignoring Porsches, again, we know I like a Porsche product, so really nice place to be, sat underneath this car, as you can imagine. However, the reversing camera is brilliant because it's all integrated into this badge here, so you can't really see it, which is nice. It doesn't kind of spoil the lines on the rear of this car. But what you have got on an S, which is the reason that I'm lying in this stupid position, underneath here is you've got an electronically controlled limited slip differential, which is the long way of saying if you want to put the power down, it's going to put it down properly. The non-S is a non-electronic LSD. However, this one really does cope with the power a lot better. The only problem I've got with this is you're on 20-inch wheels at the rear, and they are obviously incredibly chunky, like me. And then you've got 19-inch wheels at the front. I love that, and I love how it looks. But one thing I've noticed when you give these a bit of a bootful, rather than getting a number 11 scraped all the way down outside the pub, you do sometimes get a little bit of skipping on the back wheels. And I think that's probably to do with the fact that you are in elastic bands at the rear of them. So although the wheels look good and the arse of the car looks good, it might actually be better suited for a slightly smaller wheel with a bit of a thicker tyre wall. but that has been a particular geek, isn't it? There's one thing we've not done yet, and I'm going to leave my microphone here. I'm going to let you tell me what you think of the sound of this car. I'm going to do it with the exhaust on, because it's the only way to drive it. So we've established that the car sounds the absolute bollocks, which it's meant to do. One thing that I'm going to tell you is these cars are keyless. Now for me not like that, because people take it off your drive. So you've got a keyless start button, which is round here. For me, if you want to keep hold of your prize asset, take that out and stick it in your knicker drawer. Because that way they're not going to nick your car without the key, are they? A little bit of food for thought for you there from a C63 enthusiast. Anyway, let's do a little recap, shall we? Right, so that is my in-depth review of a C63. If you want me to start driving cars and take them out for a road test, I will do, but I'm thinking I've pretty much covered everything there. So pros and cons for me: looks amazing, sounds amazing, drives amazing. In the question that everybody asks, does cutting the roof off affect the way that the car handles? Yes, it affects everything. Will you ever notice? Absolutely not. Will you get the wind in your hair and the sound of a cackling V8 behind you as a result of it? Absolutely. So for me, I think it's probably worth having the roof off if you can get the roof off, because I also think it looks the bollocks. Just don't sit in the back because you're like a pillock. Cons for me: prefer the old engine. If I'm being a real picky guy, the seats are a little bit firm. The back end does skip about a little bit. These are the sort of things that you expect to have with a sports car anyway. I think that these are starting to look like good value for money now. This particular example, 2017, done 11,500 miles, it's going to be about 40 grand. So a lot of car for your money. And final positive, a lot cheaper to tax than the old C63, which was now £700 a year. Hopefully you found that helpful. Hopefully you found it informative. And any questions, ping them in the comments below. But feel free to give us a like, follow, subscribe, share. Anything else, Callum? No. I think that's a wrap. Thank you.